Teachers of Reddit, what is the most not safe for work thing you've seen while being a teacher? Former college faculty here. The worst one I have experienced was being in the bathroom while some guy was having phone sex while he was taking a crap. To this day I am amazed that I was able to not laugh. You should have started replying. There were numerous times when I wanted to. It always grossed me out that these students would sit in stalls, audibly taking a crap, fart, and so forth, all while having a conversation with someone. Had a 4-year-old tell me the myriad of ways he'd like to kill me. Shoot me with gun till I'm dead. Put me in fire until I'm dead, etc. Then he tried to push a shelf over on a sleeping child. Fun times. I don't know, this seems like something where a professional comes in. My mum works in an elementary school. They had to hire a psychiatrist specifically for the school, because I'm not exaggerating when I say there's a kid like this for every classroom. She gets death threats daily, physically assaulted, spit on, bitten, has to hear horrible things that she can't even repeat. Most often the parents don't give her it to send them to a professional outside of school, and have learned to play the system and not get forced into anything by CPS. School only had enough resources for one psychiatrist, and she has almost 100 kids on her list. In a school with 400. I think every school should have a psychiatrist, at least on call, that the school can bring in when they're concerned about things like this. The amount of hours I've spent begging people to believe that kids like this need help is appalling. Walked into the restroom one day and caught a 6th grade girl giving an 8th grade boy a blowjob. I'll see you and raise you, a 7th grade girl blowing an 8th grade boy in the hallway. Oh it, I'll raise you to 2 8th graders, one giving a hand job, the other getting fingered, on a bus with 30 other children to a school field trip. Kids would airdrop naked pics to whoever had theirs turned on. After teachers getting a bunch of pictures, we had a huge school investigation. I taught 7th and 8th grade. My school has one iPads, so occasionally everyone will just start airdropping memes to each other. I made the mistake of leaving my phone on the setting where anyone could send me stuff, and all of my band kids were sending me memes. Nothing fricked up, thankfully. I was a student in high school, and in my junior year we had a substitute of himself. I felt bad for the guy, but it brought much joy to my heart, because the chair he had himself in belonged to my old history teacher, who we later found out was a pedophile. What the frick? Yeah, it was great, definitely one of my favorite memories. Oh, it says it. Honestly, at first I read shot and was very confused. How did he hit himself? Like, was it just suddenly boom, or did he try to pass gas and the gates opened? He was like 90, so I'm pretty sure that gates just required a light breeze. Used to be a teacher for a year, but this story is relatively tame compared to some of the things I'm reading here. One day I was giving a test, walking in between the students, some girl sitting in the last row. Everyone was bent over to fill in the test, but every time I walked behind the last row, it appeared as if that girl had pulled her pants lower and lower, up until the point she was nearly sitting on the chair with her bare cheeks. Of course I had to tell her it was inappropriate, at which point she had to button up her pants again in order for them to stay up. Very strange thing to comment on, I can tell you that. This reminds me a story a classmate told me many years ago. Seems he'd had a girl in his class a year earlier who had to get herself off every morning in first period. As he told it to me, every morning, she'd come in real grumpy. Then she'd sit at her desk with her heel tucked under her crotch and start rocking. After a few minutes her face would get all flushed, and she'd spasm a few times, then she'd be all cheerful the rest of the day. Everyone in the class knew what she was doing. After a while, we all ignored her. I always wondered if this girl thought she was getting away with it, or if being watched helped her get off. Probably the second one. Exhibitionism seems like a relatively common fetish based off the internet. Paging Dr. Heelgood. Had the answers written on the legs maybe? +1 for effort if she was trying to cheat like that, lol. I teach group music lessons. One group consists of 5 9-year-old girls who are learning the flute. While one of them was in the bathroom, another grabbed her flute, held it to her posterior and farted on it. She placed it back on the table and muttered, "That's what she gets for wearing a hat indoors." This is freaking incredible. She's just 9 and already a candidate for the fashion police. I was a science teacher in a boys' boarding school. The school was located in a very cold region and so some kids would skip showers. Once I was on duty and I had to go inspect the boys' dorms. I noticed a really awful smell coming off one kid. I reported him to his housemaster so he can get him to shower. Long story short, at some point it came to light that the kid had developed gangrene around his private parts and in his feet. It fell on me as the teacher on duty to take him to the hospital. On further inspection the kid was found to also have bed bugs, so I had to be scrubbed down too and shave my hair bald for being close to him, and the health inspection office also got involved with the school and the school basically closed for 4 weeks. PS the school had hot water showers for students, but not in the teachers' quarters, so all the teachers showered with cold water. This kid really had no excuse. I'm a college student, but work as an elementary school aide in a year-round school during my breaks. Last year, one of my little 3rd grade sweethearts with ASD had a meltdown which led to him stripping down completely naked and hurting himself by hitting himself and pulling on his peanuts extremely hard. Thankfully, this happened in the intervention room and we were able to move the other students to another section before he started taking clothes off. But it was still really nerve-wracking since we knew that if anyone else happened to walk in, it would be really hard to explain why there were 4 adults trying to catch and restrain a naked 8-year-old. The episode only lasted about 10 minutes, though, and he's never done anything like that since. Poor baby felt so awful afterwards that he demanded that we call the police since he knew that what he'd done was inappropriate. So, we called the intervention specialist's best friend, who was on maternity leave, and had her pretend to be a 911 operator so he could turn himself in, because every time we told him that wasn't necessary, he'd call himself bad and the situation would start so escalate again. After the police told him that they'd be by to get the full report from the principal at the end of the day, the lil nug spent the whole day staring out the window, rocking himself back and forth in a rocking chair, as if he was contemplating what life was gonna be like in the big house. At the end of the day, we told him the police wanted us to give him candy as a reward for his day spent in isolation, and now we let him decide to when he wants to skip music class. Poor kid. Back when was an intern, I used to spend a lot of time with the school's IT guy. One of the duties was updating the browser filter so students couldn't use the internet freely. This was before laptops were common in schools. The list of blocked websites included some very weird and freaky sites. The students have visited all of those sites? IT guy: oh, god no. This is a list I created myself. I mean, that I got from a security software company. Yeah, it guy. Sure, the students. I had access to a server in an office environment back in the 90s. I was able to see the URLs of what everyone was browsing. So much peen. In the middle of the day. Men and women. It was interesting at first, then just disturbing. I'm just gonna back this list up to my external hard drive. You know, for redundancy and stuff. Not a teacher, but my mother was, and she has lots of great stories, but one in particular comes to mind. Some elementary school classrooms have very large metal ceiling fans. I haven't been to an elementary school in some time, but I know growing up I remembered them. Not sure if they are still in use now. Anyway, the ones I had in class growing up always had a large metal cage surrounding the fans so that no one would get hit by it. They are very powerful and made out of metal. One day, my mum was sitting in the classroom late after school grading papers at her desk. She talked about how she was always friendly with the janitor that would come in and clean the classroom at the end of the day and enjoyed chatting with him while he did his job. She's sitting there grading papers and all of a sudden, bang. She looks up and he's been flung across the room and landed a bloody mess in a pile of desks. He had been dusting the overhead lights on a stepladder when the metal ceiling fan caught him in the head. Split his forehead open, blood everywhere. My mum uses the rags from the blackboard to apply pressure and stop the bleeding the best she could. Called 911. Paramedics show up. Apparently there was so much blood at this point that she joked about one of the paramedics being lightheaded and having to sit for a moment outside. In the end the janitor was alright. My mum was on some old TV show called Rescue 911 or something like that for applying pressure and reducing the guy's blood loss. This, and I'm sure other incidents, are the reason these metal ceiling fans now have the cage enclosure I remember from my elementary classrooms. Definitely not safe for work. This is the coolest story. I'm not a fan. Some old TV show called Rescue 911. I definitely remember watching this show as a child. Not specifically the one with your mum, but the show in general. Summer camp counselor back in late 90s. A 13-year-old girl gave a 13-year-old boy a blowjob in the woods. The boy stupidly bragged about it to the other kids. Another counselor overheard it and reported it to the camp owner/director. He had both kids brought to the office and they each had to call their parents and tell them why they were getting kicked out of camp. Oh man, I gotta hop on this one. My junior year of high school I went to band camp and hooked up with a guy I'd been crushing on backstage after basically every practice. On the last day of camp we got caught by a counselor and sent to the camp director. Come to find out the boy I hooked up with was the camp director's son, and he didn't want to send his son home from his own camp. We both got off scot-free, and my parents never found out. When in doubt, bang the director's son. This one time, at band camp, I stuck a flute in my pussy. Do you know of a story like this? Leave it in the comments below. If you're new here, subscribe for more. We post the best Reddit videos daily. Thanks for watching.